In this video I'm going to share some thoughts on which mirrorless system to go for if you are planning to switch from DSLR to mirrorless. Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto and I'm a photographer. In one of my recent videos I said it makes no sense to switch camera systems. And that video turned out to be quite successful. However, many commenters suggested that a switch from a DSLR to a mirrorless camera makes a lot of sense. And indeed, I fully agree, it is a valid reason to switch. There are many happy DSLR users out there, and they'll probably want to stick with their current DSLR from this moment till the end. However, at the same time, there are also many DSLR users contemplating when would be a good time to switch from DSLR to mirrorless. Should I stay with my current camera brand or should I switch to another camera brand if I'm going to be switching anyway? In this video, I'm going to share my opinion on this, and I'm going to go through each format from Micro Four Thirds to full frame, and I'm going to rate each system from worst to best. But remember that this is only my opinion, one person's opinion. Some of you may not agree and someone else might have a different rating altogether. My rating is largely based on the lens support, autofocus lens support. Because I think lenses are important, I think lenses are fun, and you can't build a system if you can't find the lenses. You can mount pretty much every legacy lens and every DSLR lens on every mirrorless camera with an adapter. I think those adapted vintage lenses are more like a fun bonus, and adapted DSLR lenses are more like a temporary solution. But if you think adapted lenses are the way to go for everything, then go for it, and the rest of the video is probably useless for you because, like I said, my rating and ranking is based on native autofocus lens support. Let's first cover Micro Four Thirds. And Micro Four Thirds is by far the cheapest mirrorless system that you can go for. Micro Four Thirds is also by far the most beginner-friendly system in my opinion, because of the depth of field characteristics. You don't have to pay so much attention to the depth of field. There's always enough of it, and in my opinion it's easier to get acceptable or good results with Micro Four Thirds than with the full frame, for example, especially if you are a beginner. There are two major manufacturers supporting Micro Four Thirds at the moment, Panasonic and OMDS, former Olympus. Panasonic is better for videos and OMDS/Olympus is slightly better for photos. But you can also take awesome photos on Panasonic cameras and film good-looking videos also on OMDS or Olympus cameras. Micro Four Thirds is kind of a standard, but unfortunately those two camera systems are not 100% cross-compatible. There are some minor annoyances that may come as a surprise if you are not familiar with those. One example is the aperture ring that can be found on some Panasonic Lumix lenses. That aperture ring does not work on Olympus or OMDS cameras, which doesn't make any sense. The lens lineup is huge and you should be able to find every possible lens there for every possible purpose. The next up, of course, is APS-C. And here I'm gonna go from the worst to best system. And when I'm recording this video, I'd say Canon is the worst APS system that you can go for. Simply because of the lens lineup. Canon's own RF APS-C lens lineup is hardly worth mentioning, and Canon also do not allow third-party autofocus lenses. But what about Canon M series, you may want to ask? And indeed, some of those Canon M series cameras are really nice, and also the lens portfolio is better than the current RF APS-C lens portfolio. But I think the M series is going to slowly fade away, because I don't think it's likely that Canon is going to keep two APS-C mirrorless systems alive. And the next best APS-C system would be Nikon. Their own Z-mount APS-C lens lineup doesn't look very complete at the moment, but recently Nikon have allowed third-party manufacturers to join in, and the future looks at the moment quite good for Nikon shooters regarding lenses. And the next best or second best APS-C mirrorless system would be Sony. They have so many different camera bodies for pretty much every budget, and their first-party lens lineup is quite good. But there are also many third-party lens options, autofocus lens options for Sony E-mount, Sony APS-C E-mount. And you should be able to build a pretty good system around any Sony APS-C camera body, unless you have some very specific user scenarios. And by far the best APS-C mirrorless system would be Fuji, simply because it's their main system. They have camera bodies for every budget and for every photographer, from a beginner to a hardcore professional and everyone in between. And also their lens lineup is very complete, and there are also many third-party manufacturers supporting Fuji X-mount. And now let's take a look at the full-frame systems from worst to best. And again, I'm afraid I have to start with Canon for the same reasons I mentioned earlier in this video: the lens lineup and their stubbornness not to allow third-party autofocus lenses. Canon has some really nice camera bodies, but you may struggle to find the lenses you want for the money you have. Some of the Canon lenses are really superb, but they are also very expensive. The next best system would be Nikon, exactly for the same reasons I mentioned before. The lens lineup. Nikon's own Z-mount full-frame lineup is pretty okay, but they have also recently allowed third-party manufacturers to make autofocus Z-mount lenses, and I fully expect the next 12 or so months to be very exciting for Nikon shooters regarding lenses. We have already seen a couple of new Tamron Z-mount lenses, but I understand that also other third-party manufacturers are already working on their Z-mount lenses, so it's gonna be really exciting for Nikon shooters, the near future that is. And the next best full-frame mirrorless system would be Panasonic or Leica L-mount system, simply because of the number of camera bodies to choose from, and also the lens lineup is really good these days. Panasonic autofocus has a bad reputation, but especially for photography I can tell you that it's a lot better than its reputation. But for video, you might want to consider it a couple of times if you need autofocus for video. However, at the moment anyway, I'm going to rate Panasonic and Leica systems before Nikon and Canon. The situation can be or might be different in 12 months or 2 years, who knows, but at the moment the situation is this, in my opinion. And the best full-frame mirrorless system is Sony, of course, simply because of the lineup, both cameras and lenses. Sony has a camera body for every budget, for every skill level, and their first-party lens portfolio is superb. And on top of that, every third-party lens manufacturer supports Sony E-mount. So there's no question about that. It is at the moment the best system. Sony cameras are good, and their lenses are good, and you can build any kind of a system around a Sony full-frame camera body. There is one more full-frame curiosity though, and that is the Sigma FP and FPL cameras. They use the same L mount as Panasonic and Leica, but I wanted to mention these separately because those cameras are slightly different from any other camera, and they are a little bit quirky and not everyone likes them, but some like them a lot. So if you want something a little bit off mainstream, you may want to consider those Sigma cameras, FP and FPL. But which format? Micro Four Thirds is by far the most compact and most beginner-friendly system. So if those things are important, then go for Micro Four Thirds. APS-C is a good compromise between Micro Four Thirds and full frame regarding the size and the price. On Canon, Nikon and Sony APS-C cameras you can also use full frame lenses. That also kind of works against the smaller size and affordable price. But it is an advantage if you happen to own both the full frame and APS-C cameras. Some also like the crop or extra reach for wildlife photography or something similar. But if you know already from the start that you're going to need a pro-grade APS-C camera body, then you have to go for Fuji because no one else has pro-grade APS-C cameras. Full frame offers by far the best selection of cameras and lenses. Currently there are 5 manufacturers committed to full frame. Also, full frame tends to be more expensive than the smaller formats, and some of those full frame telephoto lenses can be quite heavy and sometimes expensive too. However, if you're willing to pay a bit more and carry a bit more, you'll also be rewarded with the best image quality. But please remember that in the end, every camera is a good camera. And you should definitely pick the camera that you like. If you like the camera at the outset, you are more likely to pick it up time and again and create awesome pictures and enjoy photography. Some cameras simply do not inspire, and some do inspire a lot. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. It's all personal. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a link down below if you don't live in Finland. And also please do check out the other link for our 2023 workshop. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again in the next video.